Nice to see everybody. The people coming in, those last moments. Go ahead, sit, cross your shins, one in front of the other. Try to move some of these animals, such out of the way so people can see. Remember, foot underneath the knee, especially if you were just to take your hand on the outside of your thigh and drop it straight down. You should feel your fingertips touch the arch of the foot or the heel of the foot. Flex the foot, really adducting, pulling especially the pinky toe side of your foot back. Come on, Katie, flex it. You flew all this way. Come on. Did that bend? Yeah. There we go. Made her foot jump. All right. Flex your feet, press your hands down into your thighs, lift your spine up. Let the chin stay neutral, let the eyes close, keep the lifted spine, drop the shoulders. Let the chin lift slightly. Open up the airway so there is no resistance to the action, at least in the throat, of you taking that nice deep breath in. And let the practice tonight maybe be about finding those points of resistance, those things that might be holding you back. In the physical sense, right? Just like letting the chin lift, letting go of that grip, that tension, letting there be freedom in the throat. And then the other side, what's the thing you're holding on to that's keeping you back from that thing you want, that you know is under your control? A lot of the things that we come across, especially in our body, yoga teaches us, is under our control, not just to fix it by healing it, but by to see where the cause of it, and it is us sometimes. So wherever that is for you, if it's in your physical body, just ask it to let go. Start to find those spots and give yourself permission to let go of those areas of tension that keep you from getting what you want. Same in the mental state, right? And it might be more than one, but just one. Every yoga practice could be one of those things. And you will still develop great awareness, because it's not about doing the most. It's about doing consistency. And it's about doing it in a way that is what you really want for yourself tomorrow. Because you may not get it today. Relief may not come in the moment when you have the answer or when you know the muscle or the thing. Do your work today for what might be tomorrow. Because just being locked in the present, sometimes being locked in our pain. Give your practice a chance to encompass all that you are. Not just the past, the present, now, but also what the future could be. And how it matters to you now to alleviate that tension or suffering, so tomorrow can actually be, and you will make it non-illusory. Right? Yoga asks us not to believe in illusions. Thoughts of tomorrow without action is an illusion. So make your tomorrow real. With each pose and each breath. Bring the palms together at the chest, thumbs touching the sternum. We'll Om shortly 3 times and then begin. Take a nice breath. Oh. Even if you're by yourself, add your voice. Oh. If you've ever wanted to do it with your teacher and not worry about it, now's the time for it. Oh. Bow your head. Salute the essence of yoga inside yourself. Bring your hands into your lap. Let your head rise, your eyes up. So I see everybody, like I said, even those that may have trickled in the last moments. Go ahead, grab a bolster, pillow, whatever you use for the footwork, the start of our footwork from these past few weeks. Take your bolster, lay it across your yoga mat, and take the top of both feet onto that mat, sitting back on the heels. Just a simple thunderbolt variation. Try to remember the actual Sanskrit name, it escapes me right now. But sitting back on the heels with the top of the feet flat, your ankles supported right now. Don't like blow yourself up right out the gate. So just before we really start the harder stuff to get towards the big 5 or 6 poses that you do seated pranayama in, take kind of a moment and start to feel where there's tension in the parts of your body that one have body weight, right? We talk about gravity a lot, or I talk about gravity a lot, and the effect of gravity on the body. Remember, your feet aren't just affected now by the weight, but it's also gravity's effect on your upper body weight then on your feet. And so it's a sensory thing. It's one of the first things that I started to use as a perception of what is my body really feeling? Where is there pressure or push? So use that kind of weight that you don't have to push downward. You don't have to flex a single thing to sit back unless you've like don't have support by not like your hips hitting your heels or there's something between your heels and your hips. So there's just a drop of that weight. Use the non-flex position in these seated poses to assess where is my body tilting and leaning. Am I leaning onto my right foot more than my left? Is my left foot tighter than my right? And don't even force a lot of correction of it because you might be trying to force it in ways that aren't quite the right way to correct it. Just kind of feel it for a moment. That's why we do is back and forth a few times. I want you to get used to feeling what's going on. And then if you feel somewhere that you have a feeling about or a thought about that's gripped, like your big toe of one foot is pressing down on the other, or you feel like your big toe and second toe cross, or you're trying to squeeze your right ankle in too hard and it's causing pain, like Katie's over rolling her right ankle in right now. Thank you. You want to just kind of start being aware of that and where you can affect it by letting go. It's a little different idea than sometimes how I teach where, oh, there's your problem, let's get to it. Well, let's try getting to it slightly different. Can you let the practice be about letting go because you know that your body's stable and you can really kind of feel what's going on? So don't try to make parts let go by force. Remove the force part. That's fighting yourself when you try to force. So let your toes stretch a little and relax. And if there's fear or worry behind that, give yourself whatever the opposite of fear or sadness is for you, some type of happy or joy, just for a moment that you can feel it, that you still got your feet, your legs, your knees, and your health enough and wealth enough in the work you do to be here. Take your feet back onto the other side of the bolster, bringing your knees onto the center of the bolster. Great. Toes turned under, sitting back on the heels. Now, again, if your hips don't hit your heels, it's okay to put bolsters, blankets, blocks, whatever you need to kind of create that support. And if you can't take the bend of the toes due to hammer toe or damage like that, it's okay to even put more support under the heels. It's the shape of the shin coming down, like Tristan's doing here, down to the bolster, and then the shape of the ankle, the arch. Very talkative dog tonight. He's gonna calm down. Good mom. We have slant boards too. Try to be aware of where you're pressing down through the foot on your own action. Are you flexing somewhere right now, or you're pushing? I'm not asking you to do a lot of the flexion stuff. I just want to feel where you're already flexing. Well, at least for these first two. Then we're gonna do this one. Then we'll go back and actually add flexion and extension. But feel where you're gripping to protect something or that might be tight for you. And just, can you relax maybe that hip that's trying to compensate, or the low back, or those areas that are gripping to stop some kind of pressure or torque or tension. Even if that torque or tension starts to come in, and you can stop it immediately if it's hurt. So if I tend to push my right hip up and my left hip down from my glute muscles. If I really let that right hip drop, it can put torque in my knee that it's not quite ready for. So I know I need to modify that hip a little bit. Don't just force tension, like don't relax into more tension. Relax to try to remove it. Find those places. It's tricky in yoga. Come forward, take the top of the feet to the bolster again. You just have to move this. Ankles are just still slightly on the bolster. It's going to be. Now, be aware of where your toes are pressing into the bolster. And can you press? Now we're going to add flexion. Press your toenails into the bolster as hard as you can. And how it can be even difficult when you point the foot like this to flex and actually get pressure in those toenails. That's the dorsal flexion action. That's the lifting all 10 toes up off the floor, the muscles you're working right now. And when you start to flex into that, it lifts the arch and it strengthens that front side of the ankle. Now, it can be very challenging to do seated. That's why we'll try it a little bit differently, right? Some of you have been in classes where I've asked you to point the foot and cross the toes. We'll do that tonight. Then become aware, are you pressing equally through all 10 nails? And then can you press down through each knee equally? So now your legs have a little bit of weight bearing on them, so it's now just not collapsed. Can you flex your thighs but not flex your glutes? It can be a little challenging. And it's going to put some pressure on the quad, maybe even into the knee. Go ahead and take your feet back, bring your toes under. Oh, when you turn your toes under, sit back on the heels. All 5 metatarsal may not touch the floor, but all 5 toes probably do, or as many as they can. Push your tips of your toes into the floor a little bit. Just kind of flatten them so they have to stretch away. You don't want to curl your toes in. So if you curl your toes, you're going to end up gripping up and collapsing the arch. You just want to flatten the length of the toe just a little, like flex the foot just enough to feel that foot press down. Starts to work the outer muscles of the foot, the inner arch of the foot, creating some stability and strength there. And also a stretch, because you're just even putting the toes in that kind of bend, that dorsal bend, and then flexing against it. You get the big toe, pinky toe down in the middle 3 lifted action. That's the muscle work you're doing right now. Create that funky foot that we practice sometimes. All right, come forward. Knees on the floor, feet on top of bolster or blankets. Start to come forward now so your ankles are just hanging off the edge of the bolster, if your foot can take it. You might have really bad ankle pain or arch or top of your foot pain. I would not come that far forward. Your ankles can hang off maybe a little, but if there's a sharpness, don't push on it. You need more muscular flexion and then extension to it. So top of both feet flat. Sit back on the heels for a moment. Get that stretch. That's fair, Katie. I love how one third of the screen is literally just on. That dog is a lot. Now try to push all 10 toes down with your ankles hanging just off the edge. So now you feel the muscle it takes across the front of the shin to the foot to actually lift that ankle joint. That is important in your standing poses to keep the arch And it's very hard. My foot cramps, I want to do it for like 10 seconds and then I have to like take a moment, breathe, and then try again to try and breathe in it. So just now notice, where are you gripping up that's not in the feet or in the legs where your work is? Where's your tongue? Where's your jaw? Where is tension that you can let go of somewhere? Not just in the intensity of the pose, but right, I said you got to make space for the thing you want and that thing you want tomorrow. All right. All right, last time, take your feet back, turn your toes under. Challenge the muscle of the leg a little bit more. We didn't do that. When you turn your toes under, sit back on the heel again, same action. Use bolsters or blankets so your hips and glutes touch. Sit upright. Use your fingertips on a bolster block. Pick your both knees up as high as you can. And then when you pick up both knees, don't just lift your heels up. Try to press down through those 5 toes. So the front of your foot gets some activity. There you go. How's that feel? Yeah. When you lift your arch up. More. Keep going. There it is. That's correct. Did that hurt? Okay. Nice. Keep the fingertips on the bolster or floor, straighten the legs, going right to standing forward fold. Danasana. Just come forward. Thank you. So Uttanasana, standing forward fold. Lift all 10 toes up. Kind of feel the flex of the foot. Now stretch all 10 toes out away from the foot. Stretch the bones away from the heel, like you're lifting it and extending it. The toes eventually lay on the floor, but you want to try and activate the muscles of the foot to lengthen forward. This is important. This is part of what the muscles you're developing in this footwork and the muscles of your thigh you're developing when I say pull the kneecap up towards the hip, which do now, flex your quad, stretch the backside of that leg, pull the front knee up towards the hip as high as you can. Very, like, really precisely see how much you can get that knee to stay not locked back, but pulled upward as you then work your feet. If your ankles collapse, push your big toe bone down. If you have had foot problems in the past 4 months, work more on stretching your toes out. Let your forward fold just kind of be there, where you make your forward fold totally about how you mess with your feet and the strength of your feet, and then it goes into your hips and back. Feel the pressure of all. Lift all 10 toes up and then feel the pressure of each foot change. Left to right, right to left. Now, try to equal out the pressure, center heel, outer edge of the foot towards the pinky toe and the 5 joints. Then stretch your toes away from your foot and try to keep that same pressure. And it's hard to keep that pressure and then extension. There you go, Kate. Did that change your hips? Flex your thigh, pulling your kneecap up again while stretching your toes away from your knee, basically. Stretch your foot away from your knee. And then feel which foot gets the most pressure. Because often when you flex one thigh, pull the kneecap up, there's a tendency to lean away from your stronger side, because your more flexible side can more easily move that left hip or that hip back. For me, it would be my left hip going back. And my right whole glute gripping and lifting it. Bend your knees. Take slightly. Take your feet about 5, 6 inches apart. Stretch, lift the toes up, get the balance of the foot, stretch the toes out. Now set the hips back and down deep as you can into garland, where you move the knees wider than your ribs, but then notice where your foot starts to go. And make this slow. Don't just drop your hips down. Go down to the count of 5, to the exhale to the count of 5, where you feel your foot start to change. And then notice the first changes in your foot, if it's a collapse, a tension, or an overflex. Which of those is it? Because if it's a collapse of the foot, you got to think about working through the structure of it better to get to the hip. Is it a grip of the foot, like one foot tightens and the nails dig in, so you have to stretch those toes out? And it may be different for each foot. And just make it slow. Sit the hips down as deep as you can without losing that connection of your foot to the floor. Even if you're very deep forward fold like Tristan is with your hands on the floor or a chair, make it slow how you sit your hips down into that action. And your knee, let your knees go wide. So it works the inner ankle, the front of the ankle very deeply. Yeah, the knees go wide, but the feet stay facing forward. Tristan's question.
Dustin, if your heels are lifting up,
don't go that low.
Don't go that
right?
low.
Not tonight, because this is about working that foot to ankle connection and the strength of this pose. Thank you. Very good question, Emma.
Thank you.
Yeah, so just make it a slow. I'll mute you, Miss Monica. You can go back to your mat. Gotcha, friend. When you slow sit that down, not only where your quads work, but the inner outer ankle just has to flex and lift. It has to center on that heel and be very strong to take the thigh rotation away. All right. Tristan's going to beat me up. She's like, second to last one, and I kill her. Bring your knees down to the floor, bending your knees, take your knees down, toes turned under. Sit back on the heels again. That was a lot, I know. I'm not a very nice guy. Good. We're going to do that one more time, but just sit back on your feet and just try to flex and push all 5 joints down. We're going to take the feet flat here in a moment. But push the toes down. Try to stretch the toe and push it down. Make this about the strength of your back calf and front foot. Now take your feet flat, but if you want to put your bolster under your feet because that's more comfortable, real quick, grab it, go for it, or just take your feet flat, sit back, and then try to press all 10 toenails down. Yeah, Tristan says it's easier for her without the bolster. You can do a lot of work from just a couple very simple up and down folded actions of the feet. The foot is real interesting. Take both hands onto the floor in front of you or the blocks, turn your toes under. Sit back on the heels for a moment with your hands, pick your knees up like Tristan's doing. Best you can. Heels up, knees up. Press down through those 5 toes as best you can. And the pinky toe may just kind of hang there, but it's stretching. Stretch the pinky toe for that floor. So keep your toes elongated, right? Remember the stretch of the toe, push down, elongate and depress. Now straighten the legs again, letting your heels come down, back to Uttanasana. But when your heels hit, pull that kneecap up before the leg starts to straighten. Start to flex that thigh to pull that kneecap higher. Make it a slow action so you really let the foot stay stable and the hips get to descend. Teach your foot to be active in the movement of your leg. Not perfectly gripped, right? But let it know that it can flex and mobile, and it can flex and have mobility. When working with a lot of people with ankle issues, usually their issue is not they're too mobile after their second or third roll. They've gripped it up so much, then they have to learn how to start to functionally move the toes differently and things like that. And so one of the best things to do is start to kind of get a muscular feeling and then move it. That's the stretch. And the ankle can be stretched easily by sitting on it or stuff, but getting that range of motion of that ankle joint where it's stable and moves, It takes a lot of muscle. So let's do the garland again, Lasanya. Feet, wiggle your feet about 6 inches-ish apart. I would err on the side of 6 or higher than less than 6. Lift all 10 toes up off the floor. I don't know why that's so funny. Now stretch the toes out away from the foot to press the toes down. Don't curl them, but flatten them. Stretch and flatten. Better, Tris, much, much better. Now bend the knees. Let your knees come forward above the toes, maybe a hair past. Let the hips sit back and feel the pressure in the foot. And it starts to change. If one side grips, stretch it. Work the toes out more, lengthen the bones away from the heel. If it flattens and collapses, lift the 10 toes, get that arch up, and then redepress the toes down while holding that arch. Try to ask yourself to find that left to right balance. My left foot right now flattens and collapses. I've really got to work that depress. My right foot is on fire. Just flex. But when you sit your hips deep into this, how much can you go down without, one, your heels coming up, and you're asking your thighs and hips to have to rotate, because you're not going to make your ankle collapse to do the poses. This is how some of your seated poses get real strong in the hip muscles and in the foot, doing standing poses that ask that deep drop, whatever deep is to you. All right, straighten the legs, but when you do, pull that kneecap up towards the thigh, up the thigh to the hip. Really stretch that front of the knee and the back of the leg. Let your whole glute feel the lift. And then for a moment, just so you see what you were doing, let your ankle unflex your foot, let your foot just go to kind of go where it wants, and feel what happens to your low back and your hips kind of collapse or twist or fall or twist and lost all or flex. Don't do it if it hurts you too much. Bend the knees, come down onto your knees on the floor, grab your bolster, have a seat. Yeah. So go ahead, grab your bolster, have a seat, stretch both legs straight out in front of you in Dandasana. Badokanasana is one of the big 6. It is a pose that I personally do not like to do pranayama in, mostly because if you haven't noticed, I have a little bit of an OCD about muscle flexion. And so if I don't get evenness in a seated pose, I really don't like to do pranayama in it. But we're going to practice how to get there because we're good yogis. This is what we do. Grab the inner right knee with your right hand, pull the thigh knee back, and then pull the knee heel close to the groin. Do the same on the left leg. Pull both feet into Baddha. Baddha, Baddha, Baddha. There. So from Baddha, if your foot is like mine and very collapsy, it's easy for the foot to roll out. Like the opening, like the spine of the book, that was always super easy for me. The hard one for me is the flexion where I have to press the big toes together. Because I need my arches to lift because of my hypermobility. The reason I point that out is so you know what thing you're trying to work opposite against. So when a teacher in class says this is the only way, they're not the Mandalorian. They don't get to like say that and it just be true. You've got to think about what you're working from. Are you hypermobile from a background of a lot of athletics or dance or like me, a medical condition or a lot of practice, and you're trying to create stability? Or are you kind of super stable because of tightness and you're trying to create mobility? What is the thing you're actively working against? And do the modifications you're learning actually work for you? The teacher's word is not law, but I want you as students that are working on this thing. Yoga students aren't just the ones that have to do the pose in the class. You got to start thinking about then after class, is that working for me? So, and then be open when the teacher says, yes, it is, but you're wrong, and just do it. We can't give away all of our mystical authority. Push the feet together. Push the big toes together. Feel what happens to your hips. If you're kind of a hypermobile person, pushing it together might set the femur bone in the hip. Fingertips behind you, lift the spine just for a moment, get out of your low back, and then try to push the feet together and see what happens. See which hip comes underneath you, see which hip wants to grip. Yeah, find that lift of the spine and then equal pressure of the foot. Because a lot of the seated poses, especially when you get into pranayama, and from these, that lifted spine feeling you've got, that effervescence of the lumbar, that's what you should be able to feel. So this lift, you'll know you're ready for pranayama if you can do this lift with your hands behind you and then use your legs to keep it in your lower back. You can do that and then hold it for 3 minutes. I'd say we're ready to try doing upright like pranayama from this position. This position offers some really interesting effects for your pranayama. Even though I don't like to do it as much, I will prop myself up until it works. Really does a lot of fun stuff for your lateral breathing because of the openness of the groin, and the lower abdominal breathing because it seizes it in because it's so much muscle to hold yourself up. So if you're just doing lung breathing, this is a great pose for that. All right, push the side of the foot down into the floor, regardless of hypermobility or really tight. That's one I find works for both. Go ahead, take your fingers to the inner part of your foot, roll the foot open like a book. Could you just grab it, start to peel? It will peel. When you roll that foot open, try to stretch the pinky toes to touch each other. And if it's easy to roll the foot open, Triss is getting really good. Go to the next two toes above it. So if your pinky toes are still touching because your foot's not open, try to stretch your second toes to your ring toes to touch each other. If they already touch because you're already then like still tight, then try to stretch your middle and then on until you're back to the big toe. But still trying to hold the foot open with the hand. You're creating a resistance to the hypermobility. So when the foot rolls open, push the pinky toes together. If they were already naturally there and you don't have to do anything, push the second set and then the middle set and then the first set. Do that up the length of the foot and you will start to work the inner arches pretty deeply. This is the muscular action to actually have the foot open and find spinal lift. That's your pointing your toes in. Hands behind you if you can. Try to keep your feet like that. Lift the spine. Try to get the lower back up. Flex your quads. Pull the kneecap towards the hip. That doesn't actually mean moving your thigh around, but just activate the upper muscles to pull that way. Feel the lift of the spine. If you think you got it, take a nice belly breath, and when you exhale, let the abdominals take your hands out of it and see if you hold it. Can you hold your legs and your spine up? That's what you're looking for. If you can do that and hold for 3 minutes, then I would say you are ready to do seated of this pose. But even if you're not, be brave, do it anyway. Your teacher's going to still help you out. Take your legs out in front of you. Be a yoga rebel. We need more yoga rebels. Take your right hand and grab the inner right knee, pulling the knee up, the foot towards the groin, knee out to the side. Point your right foot. I'm going to move Triss's leg slightly. Point your right foot. So you're trying to take the top of that right foot flat to the floor. As close as you can get towards the groin with the heel, or more or less the ankle really, centered with the groin of the body, like the center line of yourself. Take your left hand to your inner left thigh, pick it up. Stack the foot just on top of the other. Remember, the outer ankle bone of the top foot goes on that inner left space between the inner right ankle and the inner heel. So the left outer ankle, the big outer bone, goes right into the right foot, little divot. Mr. Rangar said this about 3 things. said this line about 3 parts of the body. He said, it's like it was made to go there. Like God designed this ankle to sit on this part of the foot. He then said that about the hand mudras. And then one other, I'll save that story for later when we get to that point in the class. Point that foot. Point each foot. But as you point the foot, then take your bottom foot, should be your right, flex the knees towards the hip, and then try to push your right toenails down into the floor. It's easy to get the pinky one. So then go to the next one above the pinky, ring toe. If that one's easy, then get your middle toe, index toe, I don't know what that is, second toe, and then big toe. Try to push that big toenail down. By actively pushing that down, you're actually asking the calf and femur bone to rotate more. The toes control a lot of that stuff into the foot, and that is true in these seated poses. You want to get deeper hip work, not just sitting in it and letting it stretch. Work from the asana. Remember, the deepest root of the pose is not your hips here, it's your feet here, because you're elevated. Push those toes down, and then your top foot, left foot, push those toes down into the calf. Just to start to teach that whole outer left knee to stretch, the calf, or the front of the calf, excuse me. And then flex the quads. So asana. Take your fingertips back behind you, lift. You're right there. Work those toenails on the right side. All right, here's the test. You got to keep that lifted spine. Work the legs, work the thighs, take your hands out of it, and just let your hands rest comfortably on your thighs, your shoulder, neck relax. That feeling, if you could keep that feeling like your arms were behind you, 3 minutes. This is a much easier pose than Baddha. But if you can keep that feeling, that lift and release of your lower back with no flexion, because your abdominals are holding you up, your legs are holding you up, getting closer. Just relax your legs, stretch them out, and then switch your feet. Don't just drop one foot down like I do and then pick the other one up on. I did that for space concerns. You need to do the pose. Grabbing the inner knees, pulling up each foot. Left foot goes on the bottom, right foot stacks on top. Remember that outer right ankle joint kind of falls into that inner space of the heel just below the ankle. Then point your toe. Then press your toes down as you still point the foot. Start to already feel how that makes your hips lift, your spine lift a little. If you don't buy it, relax. Relax your legs, relax your feet. Feel how your body, where your body goes down. Now, don't push your spine up yet. Just point your foot. Now press your toenails down and already feel where your body weight shifts. It shifts back into the hip. You're out of the groin. You're now in the hips just by opening your feet. Your thighs rotate better. Then flex your quads. Pull the knee towards the hip and feel the lift of the spine. As the lower abdominis engages. That's every action. Good. Fingertips behind you, get the full lift of it while still working the legs. Once you feel that release in the low back, and if you don't feel it, you might have to press a little harder or get a block or something to get a little more height. Work the feet, check in, make sure all parts are engaged, pressing all 10 nails down, right? If on the bottom foot, the pinky, it's easy to lay it down, push, just keep going until from pinky to big toe. Stretch for it. And once you got that lift, try not to push your chest or lean forward real hard. Remember, the pushing of the toes down tells your hips where they need to be. Take your hands off the things behind you and see if you can hold it. See what muscle it takes to hold that. For me, my right leg wants to stop working immediately. I have to really keep my mind on it. Because the minute I can tell you, the minute I feel my right leg go up, my right low back wants to do it, my left abdominal quits. Where are we at? Oh, we got lots. Take the legs out. Come forward onto your knees. Sit back on your bolster or blocks in hero pose. Knees together, feet wider than bolster or block. Sit back and down. Just sit down into it. We're going to come up and out of it and back into it a couple times. But remember, like I said at the start of class, feel gravity on you. Gravity is already work. So when you sit back, where are you gripping in your body? Where are you gripping in your mind about things? Right? What's one small piece you could let go tension-wise that you're doing that then you can go through the rest of it? Because if you're here looking for release from suffering, stress or pain or whatever, right? A big part of that work is, all right, I know I'm suffering. Now, what can I do to let it go, including looking at my own stuff? Because if you want to be that person without that, you start practicing being that person without that. And that means you have to imagine it and act on it, even in a small way. Because eventually you turn into that person. Habits. So once you let go of the tension in your foot, knee, hip, back, eyes, tongue off the roof of your mouth, right? Said it for years. Come on up. Bring your thighs back together and notice how far apart your thighs magically got between sitting down last time and sitting back up. Because when we sit down without flexion, we just splay apart and we drop. Flex the quad, pull the knee up towards the hip, but think about pushing that outer knee joint down. I don't literally mean put your knees up off the floor when I say pull the knee joint up, but you just think about pulling that front kneecap up that thigh. But then you're still pushing down through the outer knee on each knee. Sit your hips back down into the pose. Push your 10 toenails down into the floor as you go down. Didn't forget about that. No, sir. Push the outer knee down still. Push down through the tops of the 10 toes. And then feel the difference between this and then when you were passive. What are you gripping onto now that you're applying hard work to it, right? Even if it's a thought, man, I'm really fucked up. I've said that one a lot. Let that one go. Let go of something that you're doing to yourself that's not what you want for you tomorrow. Take both hands forward and grab the front of your knees. And if you can't lean forward enough or the tension on your knees or body is too much to wrap the hands down across the front of the leg, use a yoga strap under your knee and shin so you can grab a hold and pull. Use those strong yoga hands for doing all down dog. Palm the knees, squeeze the knees a little bit with the fingers, especially the index. You can get that bone between the first, second knuckle down. Really sweet. Then pull and lift the chest up like you're trying to pick your knees up off the floor. If your knees are pushing down, the outer, get that traction to the shoulder. Lift the spine. Remember, the neck is part of the spine, so don't shorten the front of your neck. Lift the front of your neck, lift the back of the head. So that whole spine's long. Once you feel that lift, let go with your hands, let the arms relax on your thighs. And then sit back what you think is upright, but keep that lift. There's the low abdominal engaged. There's the quads engaged. Now you do pranayama. Then we would maybe tuck the chin or stuff like that. It's an active pose. A lot of the pranayama seated positions are. I didn't understand after Gabriel taught me, Mr. Angar showed us, all of this stuff about trying to keep the thighs engaged. Took years for me to understand how much that decompresses the back and that changes how you can breathe. Crazy. I was used to be so tight that I was just sitting in it without any action. Totally blew made my life exhausted. All right. Come forward. Sit back on a bolster with both legs in front of you. Last two. Padmasana and Swastikasana. Yeah, Swastikasana. Swastikasana is a good prep pose for Padmasana. So we'll do that one. So take each hand onto the inside of your knees, pull your knees up just to take that. Take your left hand under your right thigh, grab a hold of that right foot, and pull it under your left leg. Use your arms as much as you can to manipulate this action. So when you go from that to reaching under and pulling it across, point your foot. Start here just with your right foot pulled just under your left thigh. The arch of your foot lines up with the same shape as your under thigh. It's like God made it to fit like that. You haven't heard that one. So that if you were seated on the floor and your left leg was straight, your right foot would cradle your left hand. That's the position. Then pause here with the left foot onto the floor. Push your right 5 toenails down into the floor hard. Flex your right quad, pulling the knee towards the hip, just like you've done in all the other poses. Get that stability, because when you move this left leg, if you were not stable, you'd be torquing your back to pull it up and not really get the hip to move and see where your body is. If you know that you cannot put this left foot on your right thigh because your hips are tight or whatever, I prefer you do not force it, but you can put your foot on a block just in front of you and start keeping it that action, or a blanket. Any height added will be good. Okay. Push the right toes down. Flex that right quad. Take your left hand, grab your left foot, pull your left ankle onto your thigh, about mid-thigh. And if it can't reach mid-thigh and stay there, don't force it, but then start to pull it up that leg towards the hip. But if it's on mid-thigh, that's a good place to practice from. If you cannot get it on mid-thigh, like I do not want it down on knees or calves. That's different poses. If you can get it up on thigh, fine. If not, block. Point your foot. Press the toenails down so you're flexing and extending, so you're not just overdoing one or the two actions. Left foot, point those toes. And to start teaching that foot the same muscular action, even though there's nothing for these toes to push into, you can take your right forearm or your right fingers or palm or whatever and push your right toes like you're trying to curl the foot up, right? So I'm going to take my right hand and push my toes, and I'm going to push my toes against my hand. So don't make the foot resist the hand, but make the toes resist the hand. Just like the right toes are resisting the floor. So you're creating equal action in the hip and in the leg. That is important, right? Even though this is an asymmetrical pose, it is a pose about that lift and action. Here. Now, can you keep your left foot engaged like that? Can you keep your thighs engaged in your right foot? Take your hands back behind you, lift your spine. Can you get that decompression of the lower spine and the sacral plate because your legs are stable? Especially that, for me, my right quad doesn't want to do it. Got to really ask it to be a part of the team. Lift that spine and then try to keep your legs and the foot. Take your hands out. And can you let your arms relax, but everything lower lift? Good. Take the leg out. Stretch the top leg out first. Then your bottom. Grab the inner knee, pull the knees up. If you feel like we're going fast, I apologize. Just a lot to talk about and we have limited time. Right hand goes under the right leg. Grabs that left foot, pulls it across. Try to use your arms to move the limbs of the leg as much as you can first. Before you take the right leg up on the left, push those left toenails down, flex that quad, get that stable left side of your body. Then pick your right leg up and over. Left hand, press against the 5 nails of that foot, and then press those 5 nails against that hand while the left foot presses the nails into the floor. Feel the lift of the spine. Remember the flexion of the thigh, pulling the kneecap up and lift. I would encourage, and this is something I did in my early years, if you really want to start changing some seated posture habits you have, this was an entire week of every month I had. I 7 days out of that month would be just 2 hours of seated poses that day. Just sometimes just these, and just doing them over and over and over and lifting and flexing. It's like I would watch TV and do it. Now, as your more wiser teacher, focus on yourself first. But you know, I'm not coming to your house and checking. You just have to deal with it. If you can keep your feet engaged, your thighs flexed, take your fingertips behind you. Don't push the knees down, but flex the quads. Push the feet down. Lift the spine. Try to relax the back, right? Find those points of tension you're putting in the pose and just ask yourself to let them go and see what it's like without them. You might discover that you were the cause of the problem and that you had just the moment to let it all go. Once you feel that lift of the spine, you think you can hold it, keep the quads, keep the feet, take your hands out, and just hold for 10 seconds. But you're really going for about 3 minutes. If you can sit in each pose 3 minutes with for sureness that you kept it flexed and that relief of your lower back sacral, you're ready. Remember, in the 2-hour classes I'll be teaching starting in June, there will be pranayama for 45 minutes at the end of each class, probably. We're gonna do a lot of work. Stretch your legs out. We're gonna work towards Padmasana a little bit, but because it is a challenging pose for most of us, I will take us to a partway point where I think is good to practice both sides, and then for the very flexible, we'll do. Bend both knees by grabbing the inner knee, pick up both knees. Take your left hand around and under the left thigh to grab the right foot. Use the arms to pull the right foot under as far across. Not as far, to the arch of your right foot under the left thigh. The same thing, place it was in the last pose. Push your nails of the right foot down into the floor, flex the right thigh. Use your left hand to pick the foot up and onto the left thigh. If you did not put the foot on the thigh last time, try it, see if it works. If it does not work, put it back on a block. Pull the foot close as you can to your hip. All right. Here's how you differentiate Padmasana. Padmasana is the other knee, is the other foot coming out and on top of the already upper thigh. If you are advanced enough to do so, please wait. For those of you that know that you cannot take your foot out and up there because of worries of knee pain or there's injuries, don't worry. The action is still created by pulling that bottom foot forward far enough that it goes just out past your knee. This might make your left knee launch towards space. And that's fine. You let that right foot come forward, and you prop up that lifted left leg if it is not laying on the floor with a block. I just want to be clear, Tristan's left shin is not above her right shin. These are not stacked like firewood. We're not doing this action. Her top foot is in deep up the hip. The other foot is out because this is the motion that leads to Padmasana. There's a big gap here. Do the same work we've been doing. On the right foot, push the pinky toenail down, all that stuff down. This is where you work from if you had not do full Padmasana. And that's okay. It's a good spot to work from for a long time. I did. Just even working here with that bottom leg out farther, we'll start to ask that outer hip to do things that it will get very cranky about. And that's probably the right? Like when we were kids and our parents asked us to eat our vegetables, right? We got real cranky. I did. I didn't like it. If you are going to full Padmasana, I'm going to change the camera angle down to my foot. I don't like to do it. There's going to be worse sound quality. Sorry, Pranayama. If you are going to full Padmasana, the bottom leg will come forward, but only after the top foot is in place. Notice I take my hand across those nails, hint, push the nails into the hand and lift from there. I do not grab my ankle and torque it in place. This is how I blew out my right knee in Italy first year. Point that foot, push the nails into the hand and drag it up like that. It creates a natural length and release to that thigh. So my foot rolls. My toes are still stretching to push into something. I'm stretching my toenails for my pant fabric. Lift the spine before you slide the bottom leg out. Don't slide your bottom leg out on a slouch. This tilt destroys the inner knee. Lift the spine so the bottom foot comes in front of the other. And now the knee drops, but none of my body's weight is on it to destroy it. Point at both feet. Top nails come down. Even though the left thigh is on the bottom, it has to stop flexing. That's why the lifted spine. So you can do the same thing with the right hand. Take the right hand, push it across the left nails, push the left nails into the hand, and draw it up any degree you can. This action, this point and flex action of the foot, rotates the hips. Dun, dun, dun. I see so many of you opting for this method. You're very good students to not jump in, but you've at least seen it. You've seen what it looks like. Then take your fingertips behind you. Lift the spine, because even though you might still be in this method, you still have to practice the full lift. I know, we got to do the other side, and then I'll let you all go. Feel the lift, activate the legs, practice as if it was full, and then try to take the hands out and hold that lifted spine. Start teaching the abdominals. Teach your body to stay lifted, especially the front and back of your neck. Especially in the beginning. Then you learn how to tuck, you learn how to bring the head down without shortening the front of your neck. That'll be in the physical class. Good. Take your arms out, take your legs out, take the front top leg down with your hands, move your legs out away from your body under the strength of your arms as best you can. These things got worked a lot. I have tweaked myself, and I've been around other people and worked with them that have done these poses successfully, but they come out like crap. And they'll lean and tilt and torque all those joints, kind of like flinging their legs forward. Be real gentle with yourself, especially as you do these seated poses, because we have decades for me at this point of a seated posture that is not lifting my spine. So when you come out, those joints are going to take it. Do the other side, bend the underneath. Use your hands. Right hand goes under and grabs left foot to pull across. You know, if you did the method last time where you're using the block, do it this time. But before you take the right leg into it, work the left leg. Stabilize that half of the pose. Once that is stable for you, spine lifted, grab a hold of that left foot with the right foot with the left hand, and you can take it onto the thigh hip, or you can stack it on the block, whichever one that you are practicing today. So here you are. I get my brain shut down. Take your bottom foot, slide the bottom leg out, prop up the top leg. This is not because I do not want your knee to take the torque that can often happen when you're messing with the hips by sliding that bottom leg out. Even though it may not hurt the knee, when you are doing the pose, without propping that hip to steady, to this knee to the height of your right hip or higher, you are putting pressure on the knee and expose the interconnective tissue there to some damage. And it took me 389 days to rehab that. It was a long stretch. So with your bottom foot forward, point those toes, push those toenails down. You can use your hand on your top foot, push your hand against the nails. If you're going to go full bore, feel free to reach down, lift the spine, pull the bottom foot up. And you sit here. We're going to be here a while. I had to leave you. I had to talk a lot on the other leg, and I don't want you uneven. Check in with where you're gripping. Jaw, neck. And then use your own spine as kind of a tattletale for what your feet are doing. You feel like you're pushing your big toes onto something or trying to reach them for something, right? Well, is your spine lifted? If it's not, your legs aren't working. So flex the quads, pull the knees towards the hip. Just learn to cramp those thigh muscles. Develop the muscular habit of flexed seated action. Because then when you do that, your core lifts, your back lifts, relief. But two, it teaches the core and back muscles to lift your spine again. So then when you go sit in your chairs, you might be able to recreate that without the whole pretzel form. Take your hands behind you, lift. Ask your legs to do a little bit more to keep this new height. And then for a moment, whatever part of you is gripping or holding on, not just an injury or pain, but what part of this work are you holding on to that's not doing good for you? And just let it go so that tomorrow's version of you may not have it. Take your hands out. Just try to keep that lift. Keep that abdominal flex, thigh flex, foot flex. Bow flex. All right, take your legs out. Lay on your backs for a few moments. Prop your legs up on something. Give them some care and some blood flow. I don't care if it's a bolster under your knees or you put your legs up the wall or on a chair or on your partner. Ask first. Put them up on your puppy dog if it would not hurt the dog. Lay back and let your eyes close. I've often heard the phrase, oh, when I was young or back in my day, or I used to, or I could have. I understand that desire to be some version of ourselves that our memory says was so fit or healthy or perfect. I understand. But you can't go back to being then And you don't like what you got now because you're here for something better. There's only working now for tomorrow. We're guaranteed no relief, but tomorrow there's the chance. So, the fine point of it all is, do you want that memory or feelings about your past self to be a ball and chain dragging you back? Or can you let that past version of yourself that in your mind's eye was something different than you are now, instead of saying, you should be like me, can you change its language to, you got this? Believe in that part of yourself that you're trying to get back to, that you don't need to go back to it, but it is encouraging you to go forward into something new. Let the strongest memories of yourself, whether it was young you or fit you or healthy you or even wiser you or whatever part, encourage modern, present you to be future self. Don't let your past be a ball and chain or tension around your present. Let it teach you, let it help you make you stronger, but don't let it hold you back. Just as no one likes it for a person to say, hey, you just need to be more like me. Even if, yeah, sure, they might be right. We don't like to hear that. It can make the stubbornest part of ourselves fight and resist and hold tension. Let past you encourage present self to the future. That the strongest part of you, or the part of you that you want to believe is what you're trying to get back to, doesn't need you, but wants you to grow into a part of yourself and meet future self, because they know how wonderful they are. Just as we yoke mind, body, and spirit, we recognize the present moment is created by the past, modified by our present to create future. And rest for just a few more moments and enjoy the fruits of your yogic practice.
No, yeah.
Slowly increase the depth of your breathing. Awaken the body, opening and closing the hands, pointing, flexing the feet. Bend your knees, roll the body to the right, press your palms into the floor, and on an exhale, slowly up you come. Till we meet again. Namaste.